Good morning and welcome to another week of Inside APSAD webinars. My name is James. I'm one of the clinical educators here with the Insight team. And I'd like to begin this morning by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting here in Brisbane, and for wherever you are out there in webinar land, to pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging, and also to extend that welcome to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people who might be joining us here in the room in Brisbane today. So thank you very much for joining. Before I speak a little bit about our presenters who have come from just up the road here in Brisbane to be with us this morning. Today we have Sally Upton and Vicki with us from the Salvation Army, and in particular the Munya program. I'm quite excited and interested to be a part of this presentation this morning. I've had the privilege of working with Sally 17 years ago in another organisation where we both were content leads for different areas of the program, and then more recently working with both Sally and Vicki in 2018 when they were collaborating with Queensland Health on a new state government program. So it's lovely to be able to support them today as they come to share some of the quite significant changes occurring within the Salvation Army alcohol and drug treatment services. And for those of you here who have joined us today who are on that front line, having these conversations with clients probably day in or at least weekly about their consideration of stepping up to a treatment service like a residential, I think you'll find today really, really important to understand what are those changes so that the conversations we're having to what are a potentially anxious and vulnerable group already can be clear and accurate and give them, I guess, a real-time perspective of what it might be. So I'd like to first welcome Sally Upton, who will join us without any further ado, and we'll come back towards the end to ask any questions that you want to put forward in the chat. Thank you very much, and thanks, Sally.
Thank you for having us. So my name's Sally Upton. I'm the manager of the Salvation Army Brisbane Recovery Services Centre, aka Munya. I have my colleague Vicki Yates here with me as well, who'll be presenting shortly. Vicki is our Withdrawal Unit team leader. All right, so the Salvation Army acknowledges the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, work and pay our respect to elders past, present and future. We value all people of all cultures, languages, capacities, sexual orientations, gender identities and or expressions. We are committed to providing programs that are fully inclusive, and we're committed to the safety and wellbeing of people of all ages. And I welcome those of you in the room today. I've got it now. So we have been going through quite a significant change across the nation. I'm only here to speak about our Queensland-based services in our alcohol and other drug area. So I thought it'd be useful to give you a little bit of an overview of where this all started. So I've been here with the Salvation Army Munya Centre for just over 3 years now. Prior to me coming on board, these changes had already started. So nationally, a model of care was developed for AOD services. So this was developed looking at how each service across the nation currently delivers AOD programs, collating it all and developing one model across the nation. So it's become our model of care. Each centre was then required to look at what that meant for their individual centres based upon the pillars that you see in this framework here. So at Munya, we were looking at what does it look like to have education and employment opportunities in our centre? What does housing look like for participants coming through our program? So it's been quite a lengthy process. And as we get through the webinar today, you'll see where we're now at in terms of delivery. So this just breaks it down a little bit more in terms of our model of care and what that actually means for how we deliver services to individuals that come through our program. We have also introduced additional services across Queensland, which I'll introduce soon. So that then aligns, I guess, through a through care model that aligns with our model of care. So when someone first makes contact with us, it doesn't matter which centre they contact, we do an initial inquiry. information with them, and then that will then inform where an assessment will take place. So with Queensland, we have assessments for withdrawal unit, residential, our day programs and our community-based support, and that's using the comprehensive assessments, the turning point tools, for those of you that are familiar with those. Once the comprehensive assessment is conducted, we then identify the best entry point for someone to come into the service. Okay, and I'll hand over to Vicki.
My name is Vicki and I'm the Nurse Manager of Moonya Withdrawal Services. We're a 12-bed community residential facility able to manage needs of clients experiencing mild to medium withdrawal symptoms. I've worked in the industry for 14 years and during that time we've seen significant changes in the types of drugs used, the patterns of drug use, and also significant changes in our approaches to care or our philosophy of care. The Salvation Army has introduced a new model of care, which now provides the framework to all our AOD services with harm reduction and evidence-based strategies embedded in our care. We see the withdrawal period as an opportunity to promote harm reduction via education sessions about AOD safe practices. This may include reduction in use, safer means of administration and lifestyle improvements, substance reduction, maintenance goals, and or abstinence. The withdrawal service point we see as a gateway, a first port of call to many of our clients to further their treatment to long-term change. From the initial assessment and throughout our client's stay in our unit, we encourage acceptance of and link people with long-term post-therapeutic programs. At the core of our values is the belief in the capacity of people to identify their needs and guide their own treatment pathway. So it's client-centred goals, rather than us, as in years ago, we used to tell the clients what we thought was best for them. Now we trust that they can identify their own needs and guide their own treatment pathway. So how do we do this and how do you get into our unit? The first port of call is an inquiry, which is simply a phone call. Most of our clients are self-referred or referred through the courts or through our pre and post community workers. The initial contact is made by phone and our assessment worker will endeavour to ring back the clients within 24 to 48 hours. On the initial phone call back, we do an intake screen. This is a brief screening which requires the client to answer questions around their drug history, their health, their mental health. Sometimes at this stage we can identify that our service isn't appropriate for our client, but we'll still go on to do a comprehensive assessment so we can guide the client into the appropriate service. The introduction of the comprehensive assessment is something new that's been brought in with the AOD model of care. It ensures the client's comprehensive treatment needs are adequately assessed and they can access the services most suitable to their needs. I spoke earlier that we must ensure we do not engage or under or over servicing our clients. How do we identify their needs? We do this through the comprehensive assessment. It's more like a pathway. It's not a pathway to treatment. Once the comprehensive assessment is done, as Sally said, we can identify the entry point if it's into our program, or maybe the client has identified that they'd be more interested in an outpatients program, or they may be more suitable to a hospital detox or hospital withdrawal. Once the assessment is completed, the client goes on to our admission list. They're told to ring Monday to Friday and they go up the list, but admission isn't based on how many times you've rung in. We prioritise the client's needs and we get these needs from the comprehensive assessment. So if you've got somebody that's homeless, you've got, homeless, a mother that's experiencing domestic violence, we will prioritise their needs and bring them in earlier. If they're on the admission waiting list and they're indicating during the comprehensive assessment that they need support while they're waiting to get in, we can refer them to our pre and post community caseworkers that will make contact with them in the waiting period. And sometimes I'll go and have a coffee with them, or they'll just make regular phone calls and support them to get in, support them to admission. So once all that's done, the client is admitted into our unit. Now, see if I can do this. Uh-oh. Sorry about that. I need to, oops. Oh, the withdrawal unit, because we are a 12-bed community withdrawal unit, we do have admission criteria. And I said that we prioritise a client's needs based on their situations. That may be that we may have two people that have similar needs, so we have to have a look at their comprehensive assessment and see who requires treatment earlier. Somebody may have dependent children. If they're in contact with the court systems, we do have an arrangement with Queensland courts, and those clients are prioritised. They may have child services involved. They may identify that they're a victim of domestic violence, homelessness, if they identify as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. They may have cognitive impairment and their carers are trying to get them in earlier. So we'll try and facilitate that. We do have inclusion and exclusion criteria, but I like to call them referral criteria, because we don't actually include or exclude anybody. If they're not suitable for our service, we will find them an alternative treatment service. General inclusion, we accept all genders, those over the age of 18, those able to attend to their daily living activities, and those assessed as suitable for mild to moderate withdrawals. We do have limits on some of our substances that we will withdraw from. For example, benzos will only take people who take up to 25 milligrams of Valium or equivalent. If someone's had a history of withdrawal seizures or an alcohol seizure within a 12-month period, then we need to look at them very carefully to see whether a hospital withdrawal might be more suitable. Exclusion criteria, those under the age of 18, their inability to attend to daily living. Like I said, we're a community detox. If a person can't attend to their daily living activities, we have to find an alternative service. We do not take pregnant women in. We look at a person's forensic mental health very carefully. If there's a history of violence or homicidal tendencies, then we'll try and refer them into a mental health unit. We don't exclude people who are on treatment authority orders. What we'll ask for is a mental health summary from Mental Health Authority and have a good look at that. We also consider the suicidal or self-harm history. We do naturally have a lot of clients that have got a history of suicide attempts, but through doing the comprehensive assessments, we delve a little bit deeper into these events and actually see what's causing them. A lot of them are drug related and only occur when they're under the influence of drugs. We look at the criminal history, any sexual offences, and of course sexual offences can be, peeing in a garden, or it could be something a little bit more sinister. Now, we are a withdrawal management unit, so our primary objective, although we work on exit plans and planning a person's treatment pathway, our primary objective is to support people to comfortably withdraw from alcohol and other drugs and to assist them to make informed decisions about their substance use. The withdrawal period can last from 7 to 14 days. We have done up to 21, 28 days, depending on a client's needs. We have a doctor that comes in Monday to Friday that the clients get to see. We have coverage, 24/7 coverage with RNs now, and we have very skilled support workers working with us. Our daily program material has changed with the introduction of the new model of care. I was talking to James earlier. It seems that we've simplified it. We're looking at, we do groups on withdrawal management, that, physical aspects of withdrawal and giving people tangible strategies to handle those physical symptoms. Also psychological changes and the emotions, the up and down mood swings. So we're doing a lot with mindfulness, meditation. Our groups, our education groups, when I first started at Munya, we used to go and wake up people at 9 o'clock in the morning, get out of bed, you've got to go to group, it's compulsory. And we used to be abused and lots and lots of incident reports. We've now stopped that. We don't make groups compulsory. We found anecdotally that our incident reports for aggression have decreased dramatically. And what we're finding is that the people do end up attending our groups. I think it's a peer situation. So there's been no real decrease in the attendance to groups. We now have a pre and post withdrawal support workers, case workers that are working with us, which has proved invaluable. Probably about 50% of our clients will take advantage of utilising the pre-support worker while they're waiting to get into detox. And we have a outpatients withdrawal program. A lot of people now, we're seeing an increase in the amount of people who are employed, who have got housing, can't give up their housing. So they're opting to do the outpatient program. Where am I? Is that it? No. Oh, there's one before that. We've also changed our attitudes towards taking clients who are on S4 and S8 medications. Again, years ago, if you were on an S4 medication or an S8 medication for a chronic pain relief, you weren't allowed to come into detox. You weren't allowed to go to rehab. Now we're looking at that closely. If somebody's on chronic pain management, whether it's an S4 and S8, we'll get a summary from their doctor. We'll bring them into the unit and withdraw them from their drug of choice. The inclusion of clients on long-acting injectables. Again, people who are on the Suboxone program or an ORT program might want to withdraw from another substance. So we'll bring them in, whereas before you wouldn't hear of us bringing people in like that. We're very big now on harm minimisation. I spoke earlier to that. We do education sessions, one-on-one sessions about safer use, less riskier practices. You know, the combination of drugs, we get a lot of people in there that are drinking, that are on benzos. We also, with opiate withdrawals, we do some education on naloxone spray, how to use it, and endeavour to give our clients a prescription upon discharge. We have flexible re-entry back into the withdrawal program. We do not, years ago it was very punitive. You played up if you got kicked out of detox, you automatically had a 21-day stand down. We don't do that at all now. We've had many clients that have been either discharged for disciplinary reasons or discharged against advice. They'll ring us back within 2 days and we try and grab them at that point to get them back in because, you know, as research is telling us, that's the best time to bring them back in. So that's all I've got to say about our little unit and the new program that the Salvation Army introduces. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. So how are we all doing this? Obviously, with this being a state-based presentation, it would be, I found it beneficial to give you a breakdown on what each area is doing. So obviously, Brisbane Recovery Services at Moonya, we have the Withdrawal Unit residential program. We also have a day program that's delivered from the site at Red Hill and 2 community case workers that are based in 3 different locations, which I'll share in a sec. Gold Coast Recovery Services, so Fairhaven, we have the Withdrawal Unit and residential program up at Mount Tamborine, and we also have a day hab in Southport and pre and post treatment support as well. Mount Isa Recovery Services, we have a family residential program that is a smaller service for us, and Townsville Recovery Services, we have Withdrawal Unit, residential program, and also a youth residential program that's delivered from that site. So our community responses, so this is something new for us. We've had the opportunity to be able to increase our community responses. So looking at that, residential is not the only option for people into treatment. We're trying to, through our comprehensive assessment process, identify with the person the best entry point into service. So we may have people, as Vicky spoke to, increase of people in active employment. We would be reluctant to suggest that they come into a residential program at the risk of losing that employment and possibly losing accommodation as well. So we would link them in with maybe a day program or pre and post treatment, or our community case workers. So in Brisbane, our community case workers are located in Bayside, Redcliffe and Goodna. On the Gold Coast, excuse me, we have a day hab that's delivered out of Pathways Southport. We also have pre and post treatment support and aftercare support as well for those that are completing the day hab or residential program or withdrawal unit. In Townsville, we have pre and post treatment support as well, in addition to a prison program that's delivered. And in Mount Isa, we have community outreach, but that's locally based. So actually in the local area of Mount Isa, going to where people are to do those assessments. So I've already mentioned how this kind of came about. So just a brief overview. Previously, the Salvation Army was divided into two territories, the Eastern Territory and Southern Territory. Approximately, I believe about 4 years ago, a merge occurred and Salvation Army 1 was created. So the view for AOD services is if you were to walk into any AOD service across the nation, you will get the same program that's delivered here in Queensland. So our national model of care was introduced. In September 2020, UK-based consultants were engaged to look at our program material. So all of our program material across the nation was collated. This was then shared in terms of the themes and looking at what would be best practice moving forward. So in April 2021, the Foundations program was released. So this is one of the changes for us within AOD services as well, is we're no longer referred to as the Bridge program, we're referred to as the Foundations program. So through that consultancy process, the Salvation Army provided a brief on what the material could look like. So psychosocial interventions, something that reflects the Salvation Army ethos, principles of asset-based community development, and a phase and layered program employing multiple entry and exit points for participants. So actually looking at what are the strengths that our participants bring into the service, how do we build upon that? So when they do leave our program, they continue either in recovery or implement harm minimisation strategies to reduce their risk. So our Foundations program, it's flexible, accessible, and looks at effective pathways into sustained behavioural change. It's preparing for sustaining long-term behavioural change in the community. So actually allowing participants to, I guess, grow or acquire those skills and strategies that they can then transfer into the community once they leave the residential program. Within our community-based responses, supporting someone to maintain safety in the current community that they're living in. Nurture a vibrant culture of recovery, facilitate the exchange of knowledge, ideas and experience between the service and local recovery community, and build and strengthen support networks. So actually bursting the bubble of someone being in a longer term service and actually linking them into support networks to the community that they're going to return to, rather than having to re-establish all of that once you leave a residential program. These are our content areas. I won't read through all of them. I just want to share that with you. So we have 3 core phases, if you'd like to call them that: connect, grow and live. So connect is at the beginning, grow in the middle, live is preparing to leave the service. We also have additional content areas. So we identified that we have a large proportion of individuals that come with criminal and offending behaviour. So we have a criminal justice service module that's been developed that will be delivered nationally, and then just some additional elective groups that are also available for individuals. Depends on what their goal plan is and what they choose to engage in. We're also linked in with external providers, so having regular guest presenters come into the service to make connection, as well as provide education and information to participants. These guest presenters are also engaged in our day programs as well as guest presenters. And then just value add services on site. So employment services, training organisations, literacy and numeracy, parenting programs. So what's changed? The length of the residential program has changed. So across Queensland, we have gone from a 9 to 12 month program to a 3 to 4 month program. We have removed the delivery of 12-step material in our residential program, and obviously our community-based responses and our day programs as well. If someone wishes to engage in 12 steps, we refer them externally. So we will refer them to the fellowship meetings and encourage them to engage with the sponsor external to the program. The inclusion of long-acting injectables, inclusion of S8 medications as well, the scaffolding of an individual program plan. So moving away from you need to complete everything that's that we have to offer for you to then complete program. So we look at the individual and what they have identified as their needs and what they choose to engage in while they're in program. So some individuals may do a 6-week program or an 8-week program. Some may do the full 3 months. It all depends on what their individual goals are, and they're identified at the beginning and continue to be reviewed throughout their time with us. A cessation of a modified therapeutic community. So our services in Queensland delivered under a modified therapeutic community framework for a very long time. We no longer do that. So what does that look like? We no longer have mandated activities in the residential program. So for example, work duties, church, chapel, these are all optional and by choice for individuals to engage in that. So that's been, for us at Moonya, that's been quite significant just due to the size of our service up there and the previous model that we ran under the reliance on participants to do some of those duties. And we focus on transition rather than discharging. So previously, in a previous life, if you drank or used substances on site, you would be automatically discharged from the service. That is no longer what we do. So we look at, obviously, best practice, look at the influences to that behaviour, also safety and risk. So are we actually placing someone at risk by discharging them because of this? The impact on the community as well, and then whether a transition to another service would be an option or whether we continue to work with an individual. So I thought I would just show you just an example of 2 of our timetables from 2 centres. So we start, this is Brisbane, so Moonya. We start our day at, participants start their day at 6:30. And then at 8:15, all of our residential staff come together and do a daily handover morning meeting. So that looks at anything that's occurred from the day before or overnight and any follow-up that's needed throughout the day. And then we all come together as a community for a spirit lifter with all of the residential participants at 9 a.m. So that's short, sharp, 15 minutes, any announcements, any celebrations, and then we move on with our group starting at 9:30. So we also, as you can see there, we have introduced individual recreation and some, I guess, leisure time as well into program that is either self-guided or quite structured. So this afternoon we have yoga off-site. We also have a spiritual framework that's embedded into the program as well that participants engage in. And obviously the guest presenters coming in too. This is Townsville. I'm not sure how clear it is on the screen, but very similar. So different groups throughout the day with the different levels that people are in, different phases, leisure activities, engagement in community, guest presenters, etc. So our referral points. So most people will self-refer. Otherwise, they're referral from organisations, other service providers. Within the day program, pre and post treatment, community-based support and resi, as Vicky mentioned, the withdrawal unit is a strong referral point into those pathways. With the self-referral, the participant just phones directly to the centre, and we commence that process that Vicky shared before. Email or phone referral from service providers, court referred. So we have referral points from Queensland Drug and Alcohol Court as well as CourtLink. Residential program will refer into our day programs that we have, our community-based programs, if that's been identified as someone's more suitable to that option. If it's email from another service provider, if you could provide the contact details of the person you're referring, any relevant history, and obviously consent as well. And then, as I mentioned, the client directly phones the centre. Oh, I'm spoken very quickly. Okay, so these are our centres. So this is the lovely Townsville Recovery Services, located in Townsville, not far from the airport. So I'm not sure, it's not a very old facility. So we have, as you can see on the picture on the right-hand side, yes. So that's basically the common area there. So, and you can see like little roofs. So in Townsville, we have 4-bedroom cottages that people live in. So 2 bathrooms to a cottage, 4 people in a cottage. So see a little more. Townsville also has a new withdrawal unit, which is on the right-hand side. So separate access there from the residential program. And just want to show how pretty it is. Gym, all of our centres in Queensland have a pool, so that's lovely. And then counselling areas and art room as well. So this is Fairhaven, so this is up at Mount Tamborine. So you can see it's quite a beautiful setting there, a lot of wilderness, and the withdrawal unit is located there as well. So the picture on the left is looking down into the middle of the centre. So we have your chapel there as well as swimming pool and group rooms. On the right-hand side is the accommodation. So again, 4 people, I think, Fairhaven, to a, like basically to a pod. So they're all scattered around the outskirts of the main photo in the left. And this is Munya. So that's our detox unit, the entry to our detox unit. On the right-hand side, that's just looking down into the accommodation area. So the building directly on the left is the withdrawal unit, and then the brown building you can see down below is the male accommodation area. So beach volleyball, swimming pool. On the right-hand side, this is our female accommodation area. So you can see the difference. Our male living area is the original buildings for the site, and then we have a purpose-built building for our females. There's some more. It's very lovely. And that's it. Thank you.
And we have had quite a few questions come through on the chat.
Oh, okay.
So I won't necessarily, I'll kind of probably go to some of the simple ones first. And
okay.
These might be some for you, Sally. First of all, smoking cigarettes.
Yes, yes.
Is that any change to that as part of?
No. So all of our, again, just speaking for Queensland, all of our Queensland-based services do have smoking allowed, designated smoking areas, and we also encourage access to cessation programs like Quitline.
Okay, thank you very much. And I noticed the picture of the gym. The gym's back because I know a few years ago they had to go away due to OHS type issues. No,
so we do have gyms. Yes, Fairhaven has a gym as well in Townsville. I can't speak to Mount Isa. I'm not sure about Mount Isa, but we do have gyms. So we have, we go through our WHS process and induction with participants. The gym's included in that, the use of the gym.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think you answered this one in the presentation, but just to clarify anything, it was a question through around the church component, the chapel component, if that's being required.
Yep. So we do have a spiritual framework, which is part of program. Anything additional to that in terms of Bible studies or access to outside church activities is by choice.
Is that the same now with, say, attending an AA and NA and having a sponsor?
That's correct,
Yeah.
James. Yep. So attending AA, NA, GA, and engaging with the sponsor is by choice. It's not part of program.
Okay, cool. Some practical questions. Cost, financial responsibilities for participants?
So it's a percentage of Centrelink, as most centres are. I think it's 80 or 85% of Centrelink. We do ask if people can contribute some upfront when they first come. Otherwise, we'll support them through that process, but it is, I think, 80 or 85%.
Of whatever benefit.
Whatever benefit, yeah. If it's someone that is not on a benefit and they, what we refer to as a self-funder, it would be that percentage of job seeker.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. And I guess something that was new to me in that, and I might be echoing the thoughts of a lot of my peers and colleagues out there in people having these conversations with people looking at treatment options. I have possibly been under the misunderstanding that the more you call, the higher that you actually will stay on the list, that you'll drop off the list if you don't call. I think everyone else, there's a few nods in the room here.
Yeah.
Is that the case? I might, Vicky, yeah, if you're best.
Yes, you do. You do get a number the more times that you call, but that doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, Susie might ring up and do an assessment, you know, and Susie's homeless and is a victim of domestic violence. Susie will go straight into on the top of the list. Yeah. So we, you know, but, you know, if it's not a complex case, you'll keep your number on the list. So you do, you know, the more you ring in, you do go further up the list. But if it is complex, we will look at it. We'll do a risk assessment basically and bring you in earlier.
So we'll keep getting
the call?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Monday to Friday.
Monday to Friday. Good. Vicky, while you're here,
just
a couple of questions that I think probably best referred to you. One of them was around, you mentioned before, one of the considerations was women who are pregnant.
Yeah.
Just wondering if there's anything that you can kind of clarify.
I think the decision was made not to accept women that were pregnant. It was basically due to the medications that are used in the withdrawal process may harm the fetus. You know, the pressure, is that the word? The stress that's put on the body during the withdrawal process may harm the fetus. And because we're a mild to medium level withdrawal unit, and this decision was made statewide, that pregnant women will be better suited to a hospital detox where they can be better monitored.
Sure, because you don't have the 24/7 medical, a doctor.
No, and our doctors, I discussed it with him because we used to accept pregnant women, and he was quite hesitant to prescribe any medication to a woman that was pregnant. So in case of harm to the fetus. So that decision was made statewide.
Thank you. While you're still there, Vicky,
I'm trying to get away.
Yeah. Just a clarification around the opiate replacement therapy.
Yeah.
You mentioned that LAIs, so long-acting injectables, is other forms, oral forms, I guess.
No, we're not at this stage. We're not equipped to store S8s. We are looking at, and I think it was in my performance appraisal, and that goal that we may be at, that we're looking at engaging the chemist up the road and maybe further down the track actually taking clients up to have their Suboxone at the chemist. So we're really starting to look at that closely, and hopefully we might be something up and running in the next 6 to 12 months.
Is that a Queensland thing, or is that more sort of?
It's more Moonya at the moment.
We do have a national guideline that's just been released in terms of pharmacotherapy. So, to guide us, but we've been looking at it for some time. So it's just the logistics of how we do it.
Yeah, sure. And you'd have to have 2 nurses, I guess.
Yeah, and that's another thing. You have to have 2 nurses. You have to have proper storage facilities.
Yeah.
So it would be, you know, easier just to put the client in the car and take them up to the chemist. That would solve all those problems. So we're seriously looking at that at the moment.
No, terrific. Thank you. Just while you're here, I'll just go through my list to make sure I'm not. You mentioned thresholds for certain types, so 25 milligram equivalent diaz in the benzo kind of space. Do you have any others, say, for alcohol or for opioids or any other sort of?
We do. We used to be very strict on it. I mean, 2 milligrams of Suboxone was our cut-off limit. But again, we're looking at the cases with the comprehensive assessment, looking at them more really closely on an individual basis now. Alcohol, 4 to 6 litres of wine, you know, we look very closely at. Again, history of withdrawal seizures. Methadone, we don't really touch that, 5 milligrams or less. So, but we don't see many people wanting to come off methadone. And with all the new drugs, it's becoming a challenge, changing our withdrawal regimes, you know, with the onset of all the psychoactive drugs now and the party drugs, and, you know, changing our withdrawal regimes according to best practice and the information coming through. So,
yeah, I'm sure. And are there any medications? You've mentioned that now things have shifted with S8, so people can be on prescribed, you know, sort of analgesia.
Yeah.
They could be on an LAI, so receiving buprenorphine that way. Are there any medications that someone's on that would exclude them from the program? So are they able to be, and I guess this is not just withdrawal, but potentially residential?
Yeah, it's not exclude. What we have seen is an increase in people, like, for example, taking Lyrica. Yes. So we did put a limit on, you know, 600 to 800 milligrams of Lyrica coming in. But again, through the comprehensive assessment, we will closely look at that client. I'll personally ring them up and have a talk to them to see if they're abusing Lyrica, if they're not abusing Lyrica. We ask for an assessment from their GP or to give us a reason why they're on Lyrica, how long they've been on it, you know, using that as an example. So if we educate the client to see if they want to, you know, if they want to come off it, if they want to reduce off that drug.
But they can be on it. If
they can be on it, yes.
Medical officer supporting them.
Yeah. We just had a client in recently that's been on it for 4 years, doesn't abuse it for nerve damage from a car accident. So he was, you know, we were quite happy to keep him on his Lyrica, but we do look at it. Yeah.
It's the same with residential as well. James, it's case by case. We do look at it. We also, I guess this is a shift as well in terms of our delivery. If that is the option for someone in terms of pain management moving forward, we will allow that prescribing while they're in. To commence.
Okay. Great, thanks. That might be all for your.
Okay, good. I'm running away.
But I've got a couple more here for you, Sally.
Oh, great.
So a question about a process for somebody who might be in or leaving prison who's looking for entry into a residential.
It is challenging. So the challenge that we have, if the person's not linked in through QDAC or CourtLink, the challenge we have is arranging the assessment with them. And then obviously having everything available for a date really that's unknown until they're granted bail usually. If it's someone that's been sentenced and we do have that date that they're going to be released, it's much easier to do that transition. But we do ask, we focus more so on those individuals that are linked in with services. So, for example, if someone's linked in with Legal Aid or Caxton Street Legal, where they can facilitate getting that assessment done and facilitate, you know, the bail process and them transitioning straight to us, that's much easier. Because historically what we've found is going through that process, doing the assessment, and, you know, the resources from both ends being put into that, and then someone being released and not engaging in service. So we just want to make sure that, and also as well in terms of post-release support, so having that dedicated post-release support available external to us, so we can focus on the needs of what our program delivers, and post-release support can be provided by someone else. So roundabout way? Depends, yes.
I remember you making me run around and get birth certificates when I was in another role.
That's right.
But we've got a lovely crew of people in the room today, so I'll just take a moment to pause from the online questions. Hopefully we'll get through a few more of those, but I'd like to go to the room to see if there's any. Jim.
Firstly, congratulations. I think it's exciting change that happened. I really liked the idea of the pre and post withdrawal support as well. I think that's probably going to have a big input on, did not present kind of rates. That's going to be improved, and also the keeping that motivation between maybe going from withdrawal into something else that has not been already available. So congratulations on that. The question I've got is regarding the day program. Is if somebody wanted to access the day program, do they have to have gone through your withdrawal program to do that? Can they come from an outside? And it's kind of a long question, I apologise. Is the day program part of the rehab, i.e. they go in just during the day but follow the same program as the rehab, or is it a completely separate program? And do they have to be off everything, or can they be working at that and engaging in that?
I should have taken notes, Jim.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. So first of all, referrals can come from anywhere. Yep. So people can self-refer. We have a lot of community-based services referring into the day program. So they don't need to come in through withdrawal services or residential or be engaged with the service elsewhere. The day program for Munya is located on site but in a separate area. So whether we look at in the future of including delivery of both day and resi together, that certainly is done in other states for the Salvation Army. We're not at that point yet, so we do, it's one of our houses. Yep, so that's delivered from. We have a dedicated staff member there. For Southport, for Gold Coast, it's delivered from our Southport site. Yep.
And do they have to be off everything to attend the day program, or can they be still working at making those changes?
Yeah. So I'll speak to Munya. I can follow up with the Gold Coast to find out. But with Munya, it's hopefully someone that's reducing. Yep, we just ask that they try not to come to program intoxicated under the influence, just because of that, can be a trigger for people that aren't. And then we'll support them into withdrawal services if they require. Yeah.
And there was while we're on this topic, there was a couple of questions about the day program online as well. And most of that's been answered, but there was, is there a limit and how long is it?
Yeah, so we try to cap it at 12. That's because we only have one facilitator for that program. For Brisbane, it's 7 weeks. I think the Gold Coast is a little bit less. Yep. 3 days. 3 days a week. Yes.
Sure.
I have one more question, just because one long one's not enough. The other thing that I was curious about with these big changes, and I might be wrong, but my understanding with Munya is previously, if you were a resident in the rehab, you would be involved in doing some cooking, doing some gardening, doing some of those tasks to keep the place running as it was. Is that still the case with the changes? Or
it's by choice, Jim. So that's one of the moves away from that therapeutic community model. Yeah. So it's by choice. We're quite lucky though. We have a lot of participants that still want to engage in that sort of work, particularly the garden. And the kitchen, but we also we're approved supervisor of work development orders through SPUR. So we have a lot of participants that come in. We'll have a SPUR debt. We can convert that over to a WDO, and through those work duties by choice, they can work off that debt. Yeah.
And the group work that you showed before, the slide with the 3 phases, that's what's replaced the step work.
That's correct, James, yeah. So the step work, and we in Queensland delivered the Positive Lifestyles program previously, so that's all been replaced, yeah.
And just got a question here about a discharge plan with people who are homeless, if they haven't yet got a housing offer, and I'm assuming that's social housing offer. Exit points are challenging, I guess, in those situations. Yeah.
We try to, ideally, we do exit planning from the beginning with someone. Particularly now, we did do it sort of ad hoc previously, but now that we're a shorter program as well, we don't have the luxury of someone spending, 9 to 12 months at the centre, safe accommodation. So exit planning from the beginning. As we know, there's challenges in terms of crisis and community-based housing at the moment. So more recently, a lot of our participants will engage in share houses, boarding houses, places like that. So if we're discharging someone, because we have no other option but to discharge, we will do a risk assessment though in terms of their level of risk, in doing that.
Cool, thank you. And
oh, sorry.
Yeah, right. We've got lots of questions coming from the room.
With the day program, what days is it? Like, have you got designated?
For Brisbane, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
And if a person has a literacy problem,
Mhm.
is that appropriate, that day program?
Yes, so there is a lot of one-on-one support available in that space. We do have some written material for the day program. There is some reading in it, but because it is a smaller group, that support's available. We're also in the process here in Brisbane of engaging literacy and numeracy volunteers for the centre. Yep.
And obviously the other question I have is according to the rehab. So you've got men and women. I don't know what the caps are on those, but in the past there's been a lot of women who've been vulnerable to relationships. And then that has caused quite chaos afterwards. Is there sort of some...
We have another national guideline on working with relationships. Obviously, we do, we have vulnerable women that come in to program, vulnerable men as well, who codependency issues in their history. So we as staff, we monitor that very closely. We try and do education around, I guess, some of the dangers and the risks of engaging in that space. But it's inevitable sometimes. It does happen and people will tend to leave together. So, but not very often, thankfully. The numbers, again, I wasn't prepared for that for the whole state, so I can only talk to Brisbane. We have 103 in total at Moonya, 23 for females and 80 for men.
And just, I know we've got a question here in the room, but just on that topic of the day program that Janet's question was about, is there a cost?
No cost.
No cost.
No cost.
In reference to Vicky, you mentioned earlier in the piece that you were talking about an outpatient detox. How's that run? Or is that a daily thing? Or outpatient detox? You mentioned something about that is part of your...
I think I was referring to.
Yeah, I think I was referring to the day program.
Okay, so you don't actually do outpatient?
No, we don't. Although we are, again, looking at things like that in the future. So that was the outpatient program that we referred to. Thanks.
And I think that is probably bringing us to the close of the questions. Unless there's anything else from the room here. No, terrific. Thank you for those online who've posted questions as well. And
one question.
Oh, there's one question here that's come up.
So with the new program, is it also set up to be culturally appropriate for all people? For example, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander.
Good question.
Yes. We've done significant work around that to engage everybody into the space. Yeah.